The Wedge 2 formation has been in Rise of Kingdoms for a couple of days now, and there's a few things that we need to talk about. First of all, there's one special inscription that I am concerned about when it comes to Emperor Jin. I also see people making mistakes with their account when it comes to the Wedge formation, and I also need to talk about the future of the formation system because it definitely will impact how you should be investing in this formation specifically. And finally, we're going to be doing a giveaway in this video. I have 39,000 gems that were given to me at the Los Angeles player meetup, which means 13 of you are going to win 3,000 gems. So we're going to talk about how you can win some free gems in just a second, but first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a sponsored partner created with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, because those are two of the things that you're going to need to do in order to enter the gem giveaway anyway. So I have been trying to think about how I want to give away these gems for the last 2 weeks, and I think the easiest way to do this is to simply ask you guys, leave a like down below, subscribe to my channel, and comment down below your governor ID. That way I can reach out to you in game. For those of you that don't know, this is your governor ID right on your profile, and when I reach out to you, if you are a winner, I will be reaching out to you with the official Los Angeles avatar frame. Okay, so make sure that it's actually me who is reaching out to you. If they don't have the 2026 Los Angeles avatar frame, then it is not me. Of course, you can also check the governor ID. This is my actual governor ID. Okay, everyone else is a fake, everyone else is a fraud. I'm not going to ask for your WhatsApp or WeChat or anything else. We're just going to communicate through in-game PM. Okay, so that's all you have to do. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment down below your governor ID. And once you do those 3 things, that's it. I will announce in a video next week when I've reached out to all of the winners, but just give me a little bit of time with that because I am going to Miami this weekend, so I'm going to be busy for the next couple of days. But anyway, that's how you can enter to win 3,000 gems for free. And again, there are 13 of these, so you actually have a pretty good chance at winning. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the Wedge 2 formation, because as you can see, I have made some really nice progress on my Wedge 2 formation. I was able to get my hands on Indomitable, which gives me a 7% boost to skill damage, and it increases my damage and reduces damage taken as I have more rage. I also was able to convert my Hunter formation into Advantage Advanced, which gives me another 7% boost to skill damage and an additional bonus on top of that, or an AoE debuff here with Emperor Jin. And then finally we have Divine Staff, which is just a flat 5% boost to skill damage. So all in all, I'm in a really good position right now, and my wish list is 6 out of 10. We got some nice stats: 5.1% all damage here, 10.1% attack, 9% defense, 2.4% health. And this is one of those things where I feel good about being able to get my hands on this on day 1. And I also have 8 inscription shards saved up just in time to get my hands on the Maneuver at Ease special inscription as well. So on day 1 of Wedge 2 landing in Rise of Kingdoms, without me spending a boatload of money, I was able to get potentially up to 3 special inscriptions and a rare inscription as well. We'll talk about Maneuver at Ease in just a second and why I haven't gotten my hands on it, but I'm not sharing with you my progress on this to brag, because frankly, I used pretty much all of my conversion stones to get here, and I'm only able to do this for 1 march, right? I only run a single archer march, so this was feasible for me without me spending a lot of money. But I was able to do this because I have been saving conversion stones and transmutation crystals and stones for quite a long time, and I have been telling you guys, if you've been a viewer of the channel, I've been telling you guys to be prepared for this. And honestly, I was surprised to see some people give me some pushback for that, which I have like, what, 7.5 years of experience playing this game. I feel like I know what I'm talking about, and I'm giving you the best advice I possibly can. And so the reason that I'm telling you this is not to brag, but it is to show you my receipts. Okay, so when I tell you guys, hey, prepare for something, this is why, because you might be able to make some nice progress on day 1. Okay, but that's not the case for a lot of players, and I know a lot of people are very upset about the Wedge 2 formation introduction, how it was handled, the fact that it's power creep, and I 100% am on board with you there, and we will talk about that later in this video. So I don't want to come off as disconnected from the community or like I'm, you know, excited about everything that's involved here, because frankly, I am a little bit worried about the formation system and the future of the formation system. So I do just want to get that out of the way up front. Okay, but all that being said, when we know something is coming into the game, you definitely want to prepare for it. Okay, now let's move on to the Maneuver at Ease special inscription. Okay, this is the special inscription that I have one specific specific concern about when it comes to Emperor Qin. And of course, as you know, I'm only running at 1 Archer March, so Emperor Qin is undoubtedly going to be affected by maneuver at ease. Okay, here is my concern. First of all, the beginning part of this is simple. 2% damage resistance, fantastic. 2% smite damage resistance, that's really good across the board. That's great. It's the second half of this that concerns me. Okay, it says within 5 seconds after using an active skill, for every 3 basic attacks or counterattacks dealt, the next basic attack will have its damage converted into direct damage instead. Okay, that part of the inscription we've already talked about. Emperor Qin already has the ability to convert basic attacks into direct damage factor at the cost of 100 rage. Okay, he spends 100 rage, he already converts it. Okay, now I'm gonna give a shout out to Chisgule because he was on the ball with testing this stuff over the last couple of days, and luckily for me, he just had a lot of those special inscriptions, so I don't have to get it if it's not good. Okay, so that worked out really nicely for me, and I've been very cautious with investing in this. Of course, if you haven't watched Chisgule's testing and his conclusions that he's arrived yet with Wedge 2, you definitely should check that out on his channel. It's been very helpful. But what he tested with maneuver at ease is that this actually kind of overwrites the damage that Emperor Qin is doing, right? Because Emperor Qin's skill is just 100% of your basic attack, and the special inscription is 150% of your basic attack. So this is kind of a no-brainer. Of course, you would rather deal 150% than 100%, right? So that is not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine. It's just straight up better. I would love if they were additive, but at the end of the day, the fact that it just replaces it makes sense. And also, like, that's kind of how buffs and debuffs always work in Rise of Kingdoms, right? So like, if on the same turn you have multiple identical debuffs occurring at the same time, then the stronger one is going to take priority there. That's always how it is. So that's not the issue here. The other conclusion that Chisgule arrived at in his second video is that even though the special inscription is what's doing the damage on that turn, you are still actually triggering the AoE for 1 Conquer 6. He confirmed this by having 2 enemy targets, and the second target was taking the AoE damage on the turn that the special inscription procced. Okay, which is not very intuitive. We would not expect that to be the case, because the 1 Conquer 6 skill literally says that whenever you deal direct damage with a basic attack via the Iron Pierces Bronze skill, which, as we've already concluded, you are not dealing the damage with the Iron Pierces Bronze skill. You are dealing the damage of maneuver at ease, right? So there's definitely something weird going on here. They probably will have to change the wording of this skill, or maybe something's not working as we would expect it to. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on there, but it's not a problem, right? Because what we would like to see is that even though the damage is coming from the special inscription here, maneuver at ease, we still would like to see the damage from the active skill of Emperor Qin, right? I mean, like, what are we talking about? This is where a lot of your damage comes from with Emperor Qin, just constantly dealing damage to 5 targets around you, right? So I'm not upset that it works the way that it's working, because ideally that is the best case scenario, right? Despite not dealing the damage from Iron Pierces Bronze, you're dealing the damage instead from the maneuver at ease special inscription, which, by the way, that's how I'm understanding what he said. If I'm wrong about that, or if I'm misunderstanding what he's saying, you can let me know in the comment section below, but I feel like he was pretty clear that you're dealing 150% instead of 100%. Either way, my point is, even though the damage is coming from the special inscription, it's still triggering the active skill, despite the active skill explicitly stating the only place where you can get the bonus damage, and it doesn't make sense. We're still happy to see it, right? Okay, so all of that's good so far. All of that is fine. There's no concern so far. The wording here is confusing. It's working in a different way than it's worded, but that's okay, because it's the way we would want it to work anyway. Okay, and the final thing that we are able to confirm from Chisgule's testing is that on the third skill, whenever their troop deals direct damage with Iron Pierces Bronze or the Eternal Emperor effect, it deals extra direct damage to all targets and drains 15 rage from them. Okay, so Chisgule was actually nice enough to send me the battle log, so let me just show you guys what I'm talking about, because this is getting a little bit ridiculous just referring to this. Okay, so here we can see on turn 13 it says maneuver at ease. It triggered on this turn. We'll see it show up on the following turn. Okay, the seal governs all, deals 1300 damage, and the basic attack that was converted deals 1062. Okay, on turn 14 what we'll find is that the basic attack goes up to 1500. Okay, so this is where we see it's 50% higher, right? It's not 150% higher, it's just 50% higher. If it were 150% higher, we would expect this number to be like 2650 or something like that. Okay, so that's how we know it's only a 50% increase. But here's what's interesting. Okay, Okay, so even though we know that this basic attack is being converted into direct damage by the inscription, not the actual skill on Emperor Qin, what we then find is later in the turn, Emperor Qin's Seal Governs All was triggered. Okay, now Seal Governs All is the expertise skill, and it says whenever their troop deals direct damage with Iron Pierces Bronze or the Eternal Emperor effect, it deals extra direct damage to all targets, draining 15 rage, spending 25 rage per target. Okay, and we do see here that Sun Tzu lost 15 rage, so this is actually triggering despite Iron Pierces Bronze again not being the source of the damage here. Like I said before, apparently we are getting the Eternal Emperor effect here even though the damage wasn't dealt via Iron Pierces Bronze. Okay, so just to recap here, the reason that the target was drained by 15 rage is not because of Iron Pierces Bronze dealt damage, but it's because Eternal Emperor's effect was triggered, which only apparently according to the text triggers off of Iron Pierces Bronze. Okay, so those are the three things that we were able to confirm, and all of those things are good. Those are the things that we would expect to happen. That's what we would want to see from Emperor Qin. Okay, his kit is very specific, it's very special, and it's worded in a particular way. Despite that very specific wording, the special inscription is still triggering all the things on his kit that would have otherwise been triggered by the weaker Iron Pierces Bronze skill, as opposed to the 50% stronger maneuver eddies. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, okay, Omniarch, you've basically just kind of recapped what Chisgule said about this specific special inscription. What are you actually concerned about? Okay, all of that was just setting up my specific concern about this, because the way that Iron Pierces Bronze typically works is that in order to convert your basic attack, Emperor Qin will spend 100 rage. Okay, and now that we know that you are not dealing the damage from Iron Pierces Bronze, you're dealing the damage from the special inscription, is Emperor Qin still spending 100 rage despite not dealing the 100% basic attack damage? The reason that that matters is because that is the way that you cast active skills with Emperor Qin. The more rage you consume, the faster your active skill pops, and so it would actually matter if you're not spending this rage. Does that make sense? Right, so again, we've already concluded that you're not dealing the damage with Iron Pierces Bronze, but everything around it that triggers off of Iron Pierces Bronze is being triggered still. Okay, so that's confusing to say the least, but the real question is Emperor Qin still spending the rage that turn, even though the direct damage factor does not need to be converted by the skill? It's being converted by the special inscription, as is proven by the damage factor dealt on that turn. Okay, hopefully everybody was able to follow me there, but again, the reason that this specific detail is very important is because if Emperor Qin is not spending this rage every fourth basic attack, then that could theoretically slow down the speed with which you cast your active skills. Now, here is the problem with that. Even though Chisgule sent me the battle log here, which by the way, everyone's going to see the femboy heaven up here. Okay, I keep getting added to this group chat. You guys can roast me in the comment section below for that. But anyway, even though Chisgule was kind enough to send me his battle reports, we actually don't ever see when rage is consumed, and this has nothing to do with the special inscription. You just never see when Emperor Qin consumes rage ever. Like, you don't see it off on the left in temporary buffs, you don't actually see it in the battle log itself, which is kind of weird, right? Because you see when rage is gained and you see when rage is drained, which we saw on turn, I think it was turn 14. There was, yes, the rage was drained here from Sun Tzu, and it was also gained by Emperor Qin. The one thing we don't see in the battle reports is rage consumed. Okay, now the only place that you would see that would be on like the little yellow dots that show up next to Emperor Qin as he's actively fighting, but that's not a very good, like, that's not actually numbers, that's just you're seeing the bubbles fill up, right? Which is kind of annoying. Now you can also come into statistics and you can see that rage is gained here, but we don't actually see rage consumed on this, which is kind of annoying. Okay, now I also thought, okay, well, surely we'd be able to cross-reference the number of procs of Iron Pierces Bronze against the number of procs of the special inscription, which is I know my head's kind of in the way here, but this procced 46 times, Iron Pierces Bronze procced 155 times, right? The problem with that strategy is that Iron Pierces Bronze bronze shows up on every single turn of the battle, because this is where the stats come from for Emperor Qin, right? So even on turns where Iron Pierces Bronze doesn't convert the basic attack to direct damage, it still shows up in the battle log, because that's where you gain 30% defense, 20% march speed, 20% health, right? So it's not even like we could say, oh well, you know, on the 46 turns that this procced, you know, we saw 46 fewer procs of Iron Pierces Bronze, which would be able to answer the question, right? Like if you saw this proc 46 fewer times, then we know that it's not consuming rage 46 times. But again, this procs 155 times, and the battle log itself is of course a full 155 turns. Okay, so it shows up in every single turn of the battle log because it is the source of the stats for Emperor Qin. So that is my concern with that special inscription. The way that we would test this is to just run a couple of battles with the special inscription, run a couple of battles without the special inscription, and see if it has any impact in the speed with which you cast your active skills. The other way that we could find out is when the developers get back to me. I already asked them, I reached out to ask them this specific question, and it's been like 30 hours. I haven't heard back from them. I know that right now they're probably dealing with a dumpster fire because the event that came around for the Wedge 2.0 actually disappeared. It was like a 7-day event. It's where you got your 3 free conversion stones. That event just disappeared at reset, and they are working to fix it. They've already announced that over on Discord. So I'm sure they've got a lot on their plate, which is why they haven't been able to respond to my specific inquiry about how the rage actually works for this highly specific situation. But that is my concern with that special inscription, and that is why I have not actually bought it yet. Because if you're still consuming the rage despite the damage coming from maneuver at ease, that is the best case scenario, right? Because again, you want to consume rage as Emperor Qin, you want to cast your active skills as fast as possible, and if we can confirm that you are still consuming rage on those turns, then I will probably be grabbing this, because this is an extremely good inscription. I mean, I might still get it just for the top part, honestly, but I do just want to make sure that we're not going to be seeing slower active skill casting on Emperor Qin if you have the special inscription. Frankly, I think that would be kind of shocking if it was like, I mean, that would surely be a debuff, right? I mean, if that were the case, you probably would rather have ballista here, which, you know, I can't imagine the developers would let something like that slide. I don't think they would want to intentionally sort of debuff Emperor Qin, or I guess unintentionally debuff Emperor Qin by doing that. But because it doesn't show up in the battle log, I just can't say for sure. And so either one of you guys can let me know in the comment section below if you have maneuver at ease and you've tested the specific thing that we talked about in this video and you have proof of it. Let me know in the comment section below. Or if the developers do get back to me with a specific answer on how this works, I will put it in the pinned comment down below as well. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to talk about in this video. The second thing that I want to talk about is actually from the face-to-face with the developers all the way back on April 21st 2025. This is 11 months ago, almost exactly. Okay, this was posted by a goose, and very far down at the very bottom, question 10 asked, going forward, how often will new formations be added? Whenever I start focusing on a new formation, I worry that a new one will come out right after. I think a lot of you guys watching, myself included, are feeling this specific concern right now at this exact moment. Okay, and their answer from a year ago was that between December of 2025 and May of 2026, we plan on releasing 3 new formations focused on smite damage, skill damage, and combo attack damage. After that, we plan on adding new formations for these 3 damage types every 18 months. Now, since then, things have changed. Obviously, we are now at the end of March, and we're just seeing the first of these 3, and I don't think we're going to see 2 new formations before May. I think that would be just absolutely insane. The entire community would be up in arms. They would be freaking out. Clearly, they pushed this timeline back. Okay, but the second half of this answer, adding new formations for these 3 damage types every 18 months, what that means is on average we should expect to see 1 new formation for these damage types every 6 months, right? That's how you get 18 months divided by 3 damage types is every 6 months we should expect a new formation, right? Now, I do just want to say that if the first part of this answer is outdated, then certainly the second part of this answer can be outdated as well, right? So I don't want to freak everybody out, but this is kind of the closest thing that we have to a loose timeline of when we can expect new formations, right? I mean, like, this is literally from the developer. They said this, right? Now, again, it could be outdated, but we know for certain, at least at some point, this was their plan, okay? And I think a lot of people are, first of all, a little bit upset with how the power creep has worked out for the Wedge formation 2. And if we know for sure that 6 months from now, we're going to be getting Delta formation 2, then I don't think that people are going to have enough conversion stones accumulated over the next 6 months to really make good use out of Delta formation 2. Okay, so I think people would be upset about a 6-month release window, but I want to at least mention it here for the same reason that I mentioned that these new formations were coming in the first place. Okay, because what I'm seeing right now is people are looking at, you know, they're looking at CPO and Ragnar, they're looking at maybe even CPO with Liu Che, they're looking at Joan of Arc Prime with Hua, they're looking at Hua with King Arthur, and they're saying, man, I should get Wedge formation 2 for those commanders themselves. And the answer is almost certainly no, you should not. Okay, because not only do we know that the future of calves is like 99% chance the future of calves is combo damage, okay, and we know the future of infantry is 99% chance smite damage, all right, then all it takes is one new release and you're gonna want to bench those skill damage commanders because they're already old, their damage factor is outdated, their stats are outdated, they are behind right now. And so while they might perform really well with Wedge formation 2, that is an extremely short-term solution to building your account, and that is amplified even more when you consider that we might be 6 months away from Delta formation 2 or Pincer formation 2, right? I think Delta will come first because that's how they released in that order, but like, man, it would be really awful if you spent a bunch of conversion stones to make Ragnar CPO useful with Wedge formation 2, and then in 6 months we have Delta formation 2, and you would have wished you saved those for your second cavalry march or for your, even for your first cavalry march, right? So you need to know this stuff. Again, even if the 6-month timeline is not accurate, it's still not a safe bet to be using a bunch of your conversion stones right now for outdated commanders with damage types that don't align with their troop type anymore. Okay, and the concern around the sustainability of the current quote unquote release strategy for version 2 of these formations was brought up by Ruz over on the official Rise of Kingdoms Discord. Okay, and Ruz actually, there, of course, if you guys don't know, there is an in-game suggestions section over on the official Rise of Kingdoms Discord. I will link to Ruz's specific suggestion in the description below so you guys can go check it out, whether you agree with him or disagree with him. I'm sure that you know, the discussion is very important to have right now, but I wanted to just go over Ruz's issue with the way that Wedge 2 is released and his proposed solution to this, because I do think it is a very good solution. Okay, so he begins by saying, at the Dubai meetup, it was mentioned that new formations will be coming every 6 months, sticking to the 3 main types of damage, starting with Wedge 2. And this is what we just went over. This was also echoed in that April face-to-face with the developers. To transfer one set of Wedge 1 to Wedge 2, it costs $780 of the recast and reforge bundle. Most players don't only run one set though, which means this cost will end up doubling and possibly even tripling for any other Wedge 1 sets that they want to convert. If they don't convert, they will simply be left behind by a big margin due to the power creep of how strong the new formation and inscriptions are. And I think this is one of the things that I think people are a little bit frustrated with, is that Wedge 2 is literally just better, right? Like there's no situation where you would prefer Wedge 1, frankly. I guess we would have to see rally and garrison testing, but like across the board, it's just better. The numbers are just bigger, right? It's a bigger boost, it's more damage, it's even the formation itself gives you 12% skill damage over 5, right? So like it is categorically just a step above Wedge 1, which is a type of power creep that frankly, like, we're kind of used to, but not really. Like if you look at commanders, for example, like some older commanders are still usable in the open field. We're looking at YSG, Alexander the Great, Attila. These are commanders that have been out for years now, in the case of YSG since the game started, and even though they've been power crept in many different ways, they do something that keeps them relevant, right? And in the case of equipment, I guess you know, technically there are things that are categorically better, but in some situations, like as you're progressing through the mid game, okay, maybe you would rather the special talented Kurok's humility, over the set piece legs for infantry that doesn't have a talent. Like there's a little bit of wiggle room in the equipment system. I would say not as much as commanders, but there's a little bit there. In the formation system, this is no wiggle room. You just have a newer, better thing in every conceivable way, at least at the time of recording this, that I can tell. And I think that's what kind of makes people a little bit upset here. Okay. And it's not just that it's categorically better, it's also that like it's really hard to get it. Moving on with what Russ identified as the issue here, he said, in the case of Wedge 2 specifically, most players run 2 archer marches, and with the new archer commander arriving in early mid-April, most players are incentivized to convert at least 2 archer Wedge 1 sets to Wedge 2, which amounts to about $1,560, which is a lot of money for a mobile game. Okay, it's a lot of money in this economy. Now, while some players were able to build up some amount of conversion stones since their release, a lot of players have already spent stones moving their other formation sets around, like upgrading Arch to Pincer or Delta, or Wedge 1 to Pincer or Delta, which is, I'm actually in that boat. I did recently upgrade my second cavalry set from Wedge 1 to Delta. Okay, so I did recently spend a couple of stones. It was not much, but it was something. And like, as you guys know, these stones are really hard to get. Okay, they're 10,000 gems a piece, and I'm not alone here, clearly. All right, Ruz goes on to say, regardless of this, even if players were able to afford transferring Wedge 1 to Wedge 2 fully, they would only have a 6-month period to save up more stones for the next Delta 2 upgrade, where in that time you can only gain 23 stones by natural means without spending money, 10 total from KVK if you run it twice, and 3 from the event we were given today if it were to repeat, which I definitely think that it should. This means most players can only afford to move half of their full legendary sets, where 1 legendary inscription costs 10 stones to convert. Even older free-to-play accounts have multiple special inscriptions. Players in the mid to high spending range, or some players who have chosen to invest deeper into armaments, have to spend upwards of 100 to 140 stones this cycle for Wedge 1 to Wedge 2, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially if they didn't save up conversion stones previously. If you guys are watching the channel, if you guys are subbed to my channel, you've been saving, baby. I've been saying for months you should be saving. But anyway, I understand people have like different KVK timelines and stuff, and like they couldn't save. They're a rally garrison leader, they have to be ready for Kingsland, so they have to spend the stones to be prepared for garrison in Kingsland. Like, it is what it is. I get it. Okay, I get it. Anyway, if this pattern were to continue every 6 months, it means that at minimum, most players who run a 2-march setup for the troop type that is on cycle for its 2.0 upgrade, if they have at least 6 special inscriptions across their 2 marches / sets of 1.0, they would need to spend at least $700 on top of their existing rock budget to convert all of their specials plus any remaining rare / common inscriptions across their 2 marches, which is completely unsustainable. And if they don't, they risk falling behind way more due to the increasing power creep of the new inscription. Okay, so this is the issue that Ruz identified, and I 100% agree, assuming that a few things are true. One, if it's true that every 6 months we're going to be getting a new formation of a relevant damage type, and it's going to be a categorical improvement, right? Like just objectively better, that is going to be a problem. Like that is just a little too fast given the current rate with which we get conversion stones. Now, the other thing I do want to mention this, right? And like, I know Ruz has been playing forever, and Ruz is, all the interactions that I've had with Ruz, very limited as they may be, Ruz is a very level-headed player, and he understands the game extremely well, and he also understands that this is a business, right? So I know that Ruz knows this, but the only thing that I'll kind of mention here is that like, we know that the developers are not adding more systems to the game. Okay, so over the years we had equipment, and then we got iconic tiers, and then, you know, over the years we didn't have crystal tech, and then we got crystal tech, and over the years we didn't have the formation system, and now we got formation system. Okay, so over the years they've added more systems, and they are done with that. And so right now the only sources of power creep, I say only, right, these are huge sources of power creep, the only sources of power creep are commanders and formations, right? Equipment is, according to them, done. Okay, who knows what they're planning with that, but I mean, according to them, they're adding no more systems. I guess they could modify the existing systems, but right now commanders and formations are the main sources of power creep. Okay, and I do think that it's a little bit privileged of us as players to assume that we should be able to, on day one, always get the newest, latest and greatest stuff just by playing the game, right? I think obviously I want that, right? I am a content creator, but primarily I'm a player of the game. I like Rise of Kingdoms. I enjoy playing this video game, right? So like I would love to get the latest and greatest stuff on day one without increasing my spending, and just through daily activity being able to get that would be the best case scenario for the most number of players, myself included. So I'm on board there. I don't want to sound like I'm being combative here, but I do think that that is not necessarily an expectation that we should have, because we don't have that with like equipment, for example, right? Like I'm not able to just get the best equipment in the game right now, right? Like they added iconic tiers. I wasn't able to just get iconic tier 5 on everything right out of the gate, right? So I think also to expect like, oh well, we need to be able to have enough conversion stones when Delta 2 lands to immediately be able to convert everything. It's like, well, I don't think that's what the devs are building towards, right? Like they probably want people to chase stuff, right? Which I don't want to chase stuff, but again, I'm just pointing out that like maybe our expectations as players is a little bit demanding, okay? But that being said, I did drop a thumbs up. I do agree. I think that the current way that this is working is unsustainable. That is the core message that Ruz is sending, and that message I completely agree with. Maybe we don't need enough conversion stones for all players to immediately get the best stuff on day one for every March, but surely there's a middle ground where we can compromise and we can get a bit more than we're getting right now, right? I think that would be the goal. That is like what we want to achieve by providing this feedback to the developers. Okay, so let's see what Ruz has to say about the solution here to this problem. The core issue is that if you own a lot of inscriptions or win a lot of KVKs, you get punished much more, which is a counterintuitive issue to have, since why should players be punished for winning KVK and receiving an Autarch? Or if you want your account to be stronger, most players are opting to invest more specifically into improving their armaments. Not only are mid to high spenders being hit the hardest, but also even lower spenders that are old accounts due to naturally having a large number of inscriptions built up over time. Many free-to-play players who have won a lot of KVKs due to their hard work will be completely left behind, because how can they possibly keep up with new formation upgrades due to the lack of stones available to them? Absolutely true. Okay, 100% true, on board. The only player base untouched by this issue is the mega whales who purchase the bundle every single day, which is an extremely low percentage of players. Yeah, that is almost nobody, right? Like it is almost nobody. It is less than 1 or 2% of the player base, right? Like basically nobody is going to be unaffected by this, which is why this is a big issue. Okay, with that being said, the fixes are actually very easy. So how do we fix this? Some recommendations. 1, if you upgrade from a formation version 1 to a formation version 2, you should pay 50% of the cost to convert that set, and for the current situation, refund 50% of the cost for all players who have already converted from Wedge 1 to Wedge 2. This is a very elegant solution, and I like this a lot. Okay, because you know, I can understand the cost of going from arch formation to, you know, Wedge 2.0. okay, like sure, maybe because you're completely flipping the script and you're completely changing formations, then yeah, it has a full cost. But if you're going from Wedge 1 to Wedge 2, you're not actually changing formations. It's still Wedge formation. Like it is by definition the same actual formation, right? Like if we just zoom out, formations are how troops march around the field, right? Like in the real world, it's like how armies are organized, okay, on the battlefield. And previously your units were organized in the Wedge formation, and now they are still in Wedge formation. It's just they slapped a 2 on it, right, and just made the numbers bigger. So really you're not actually changing formations, you're just getting the better version of that formation. So why should it cost 100% if you're not actually changing the formation? You're just upgrading the formation to that formation 2.0, right? And so I think having it cost less to stay within the same boundary of that formation, but you're just upgrading, I think it should cost less. I think that's a fantastic solution here. I really like this a lot. Not only does this allow most of the player base to afford swapping their main set every single new formation cycle due to half the cost, but why should players pay full price for an upgrade from the literal same formation with a rename and a change of inscriptions? That's exactly what I just said. So on the same page, 100% agree. This is a great part of the solution. Okay, number 2, add conversion stones as a reward in loot pools for different events, PvE events like Ceroli or Realm of Mystique, so active players can accumulate these stones over time and also provide more from KVK rewards no matter win or loss. It doesn't make sense that you get an Autarch for a legendary inscription just to have to spend double the stones you get as a reward to upgrade it with within 6 months. Yes, also 100% agree. Okay, completely agree with this. They could definitely stand to add a couple of conversion stones in a couple of different places. I mean, there's some really easy places you could add it, like the Gloss Canyon shop, right? Like frankly, I've got like 20 plus iconic crystals at this point. I don't need any more, right? So, you know, maybe at the bottom here, add a conversion stone and you can get 1 per kvk or 2 per kvk, and maybe they cost like 50,000 or something. I don't know. Or maybe they just, or maybe keep them 20,000. I mean, I think 20,000 is kind of expensive, right? So like maybe keep them at that point. I don't know, but I'm saying like that's a good place you could add it. Obviously you could add them in the mid-season review or in places that kind of just encourage players to actually fight, right? That way people are actually participating in kvk. There's so many places that you can actually add this reward to the game. So I do really like this solution. Of course, you could also add it to the combat shop and have it cost season coins instead of conquest coins, and maybe limit it to like 2 or 3 per kvk or something like that, right? Like just adding 1 or 2 here and there would actually go a long way. So I like that a lot. Next up, Ruz said add conversion stones at a discount in the VIP shop so players can have the option of investment to plan for formation upgrades or for more than gems spending for most players. This is again a fantastic solution here. Unfortunately, if they did do that, I think that they would have to put it at VIP 19 or SVIP, which would put it out of reach for, again, 98% of players, right? So if they did put it in here, I think that it doesn't really solve the problem, but it does help some of the higher end players that do have max VIP. Do I personally care about the SVIP players? No, I think they've got plenty of advantage as it is, but you know, I get it. I can understand why we would want it in there, but this part of the solution I really like. Allow using formation version 1 armaments on an equipped formation version 2. If a player can only afford to swap 1 or 2 armaments, then they can swap the armaments they can afford to the formation version 2 while still using the older version 1 inscriptions as a mix. This not only allows players to utilize the buffed percent stats that the formation gives, 12% skill damage for Wedge 2, but also gives players the opportunity to experiment with new combinations of inscriptions, right? So I really like this solution a lot. So for example, what Ruz is saying here is, you know, maybe I don't have a really good flag inscription or flag armament for Wedge 2.0, but let's say I do have a really good flag armament for Wedge 1.0. I don't, okay, but just pretend I do, and then I can literally just use the old armament with the new formation, right? Just mix and match them. And I like this because, as Ruz said here, we could then like run a Wedge 2.0 with unstoppable instead of whatever and see what's better, right? Now again, at this point, like we kind of know that all of the Wedge 2 are better than the Wedge 1, but at least if you could mix and match them, then we could say that it's a step in the right direction. Okay, and then finally, in combination with the points above, extend the time from 6 months apart to at least 12 months in between new formation drops. This will allow conversion stones to be in more abundance in between newer releases. Now this part I actually don't know if I agree with, and the only reason I don't necessarily agree with this part is because as we see with Wedge 2, it is just a cut above everything else, right? It's just better than everything else. So if we only got 1 new formation every year, then whatever the latest formation is for that year, that troop type is gonna have an advantage for an entire year, right? And that just kind of feels bad. At least with the 6-month gap, it's like, okay, well then 2 troop types are kind of competitive within a year. So I think you don't necessarily need to spread them out more if the rest of these are done right. That's kind of how I'm thinking. Now it would really come down to just how many conversion stones they can give us, right? But Ruz concludes by saying, while a lot of players understand Lilith still has to run a profitable business, and Lego Games, by the way, those are the developers, this goes a bit too far on the power creep due to the current system of conversion stones, which only the very small percent of the player base that gets unaffected is the very, very large whales who have infinite of these stones regardless. We also see Cortex chiming in here saying, completely agree. I rarely complain about things being added to the game, as I understand it's a business and needs to be profitable, but in my opinion, the cost and unsustainability of this is really insane and something needs to be done about it. So I figured I would share this with you guys because, one, I think that Ruz has really an acute understanding of the problem here and how unsustainable it actually is. And also I think Ruz provided a really good solution to this, to the point where like I don't know if I can even add anything of value here. So I just wanted to straight up share what Ruz shared here, and I will link it in the description below. If you agree with the conclusion Ruz arrives at and you agree with the solution, then go in here and drop a thumbs up or an up arrow. We are nearly at 1,000 already, so I think a lot of people are feeling the exact same way here. And I think, you know, I've said this in the past, and I know now that I've literally met the developers at the in-person meetup in LA, I know for certain that the developers want this type of feedback, right? And this is very constructive. Notice how Ruz is not cursing, they're not whining, they're not complaining, they're literally just identifying problems and then providing solutions. That is the correct way to give feedback to the developers. Having a meltdown is just not going to do anything. So go ahead and support this post over on the Rise of Kingdoms Discord if you like it. Anyway guys, that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. I just wanted to cover the specific concern that I have with the one flag inscription. You guys can let me know in the comments if you have the answer to that. I also wanted to warn you guys that we might be 6 months out from Delta 2, so don't spend all your conversion stones here. And 3, I wanted to kind of point a spotlight on Ruz and sort of the issues that they've brought up and the solutions, because I think if we can solve this problem before Delta 2 comes down the pipeline, then we might be in a better position just as a community and with the way power creep is working in Rise of Kingdoms. So that being said guys, let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And like I said, like, comment, and subscribe to enter the 39,000 gem giveaway. Don't forget to include your governor ID in the comment down below if you want to be entered. 13 of you will win 3,000 gems apiece. There's codes in the back here, they are covered up, so don't try to zoom in. Anyway, with that being said guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.